What are the best and worst Pokemon for every single type in Gen 9 OU? Let's get right into it, why don't we? Starting things off with the normal type, the best in the game is Blissey, the only OU ranked normal type in Gen 9, which is kind of surprising, isn't it? Blissey is outranking even powerful new ones like Ursaluna. The normal type is rough in Gen 9. It's really plain. Having no resistances sucks, and it's a very poor offensive type. Blissey has always been one of the best defensive Pokemon in the game, and it has stood the test of time evidently. Blissey remains the only thing that can check every special threat in existence. And on stall teams, Blissey still has a valuable place. Even though Blissey has been nerfed, it doesn't have Toxic anymore, which was its main way to wear things down and actually do some damage to things. Lost that very important option, but just being a blob of stats that can heal and make Stealth Rock at least has its value. And with incredibly powerful new special threats introduced in Gen 9 like Iron Moth and Raging Bolt, having a Pokemon that can just wall all of them is still very good, enough for it to be OU. And what about the worst normal type in the game? And by the way, I'm only going to consider fully evolved Pokemon for this category because I hardly think it's fair to put a baby Pokemon as the worst in the game. They haven't even gotten the chance to prove themselves yet. I judge Pokemon by their adult forms, and I think the worst one is got to be Greedent. Greedent is just no good. It's no good. And you might be thinking, but wait a minute, what about Furret, Jimothy? Furret literally doesn't even have a good ability. Its best ability is Frisk to scout out an item. That is nothing. Well, Furret at least has the Trick Choice Band combo. You can trick a choice band onto something and that might like cripple a wall, and Furret can get you a win off that. That's at least something. Greedent on the other hand has absolutely nothing going for it. It has the ability Cheek Pouch, which heals you if you consume a berry. I mean, that's better than what Furret has, but Greedent is way too slow. It can do Belly Drum to activate Citrus Berry and then maybe Sweep, but I don't think that's ever happening. I don't think that's ever happening because you're too slow and you have nothing. You don't even have Quick Attack for priority or anything. So I think it's Greedent. I think Greedent is the worst of the normal types. For the fire type, the highest ranked fire type in Gen 9 OU is Iron Moth, the all-new future paradox form of Volcarona. Now, Volcarona is banned to Ubers in Generation 9. If that wasn't the case, Volcarona would be the best because Volcarona got incredibly buffed with the new Terra mechanic that allows it to set up Quiver Dance better than it ever could before. But since Volcarona is an illegal Pokemon, Iron Moth is the next best thing, kind of. It is a fantastic special threat with an incredible 140 base special attack, a high speed stat of base 110, and access to booster energy. This is a consumable item that activates the effect of Photosynthesis or Quark Drive on Switch In, and those abilities grant a boost to your highest stat. So Iron Moth can engineer its EVs in such a way that it gets a speed boost, and having a speed boost as soon as you hit the field is very powerful. Iron Moth has great stab types with Fire and Poison that are quite complementary because Fire hits the Steel types that you can't hit with your Poison damage. Fiery Dance is also a crazy move that has a 50% chance to raise your special attack, so your pretty good 80 power fire move can also just boost you up to the point where you sweep everything. Iron Moth is a very good late game cleanup Pokemon and a go-to special offensive threat for aggressive teams that want immediate firepower and a scary attacker right off the bat. The worst fire type in the game, on the other hand, would be Magcargo, and it does pain me to say so. I'm a big Magcargo fan. It's a beautiful Pokemon. It's an inspired Pokemon, but we can't deny the truth that this is an atrocious competitive fellow. It has a fire rock typing, which is just dreadful. It's dreadful. You are times 4 weak to ground and water, which are incredibly common types, and you will fall instantly to a simple attack of either of those types. Magcargo does at least have the ability Flame Body, which is a great ability, 30% burn chance on contact. You've got Stealth Rock to at least do something. Lava Plume is pretty good stab move that can spread a burn. You got Will-O-Wisp to apply direct burn, and you got a high defense stat of 120. I did use this a bit in Gen 9 ZU, and I was pleasantly surprised with how okay it was. I was mostly just using it for fun as a joke. You could probably just switch it out with any other rock setter and you'd have a better experience, but it can at least achieve a little bit of value for you, in my experience at least. But there's no denying that this is the worst fire type in the game. Nothing really comes close. Magcargo is having an extremely rough experience, for sure. The best water type in Gen 9 OU would have to be Ogerpon Wellspring. Ogerpon is a new legendary with many different forms based on what mask it is wearing, and Wellspring is the water type form. It's got a water grass type combination, which is quite nice. Water absorb as an ability, which is fantastic. Water immunity, and crucially an immunity to Scald, which is very useful as a water type physical attacker. And you have very solid offensive stats with 120 attack and 110 speed. The Wellspring mask is actually a very good item, granting 1.2x power to your attacks. That's like Life Orb almost, but without any drawback. Pretty incredible, to be honest. Seriously enhances your damage output. Ivy Cudgel is a 100-100 attack that becomes water type when you're wearing the Wellspring mask. So that's a very, very powerful water type physical move. And crucially, this does not make physical contact, so you're not going to be affected by Iron Barbs or Rough Skin or Rocky Helmet or Static or anything. And that is crucial, because those kinds of contact punishing effects are on the rise, and there's a lot of Static Zapdos and Helmet, Corviknight, and Rough Skin, Garchomp, and all those fellas running around. But you completely bypass that with a massive water type physical hit that can't miss, and it has a high crit ratio. It's pretty common to crit with Ogerpon Wellspring with this attack that was already good enough, but then if you get a crit with this, that's often game winning, and you can... Ogerpon Wellspring is having a significant impact on the Gen 9 OU metagame, basically serving to nerf all other water types because of its water absorb, and it's faster than many of them, and it threatens them with its grass stab. So rain teams kind of suck right now, largely because Ogerpon Wellspring is in the game, and it shuts down rain strategy significantly. And the worst water type in the game, on the other hand, is Love Disc, and this guy has held the title of worst water type in the game ever since it was introduced back in Gen 3. A lot of people think this guy is the baby form of Alomomola. They look very similar and have similar traits, but no, this is a fully evolved single stage Pokemon with a bizarre design. It has Swift Swim for double speed in the rain, and yet it has no offensive stats to take advantage of that. It has actually a pretty decent move pool for a water type, typical Surf, Ice Beam, and actually Flip turns okay, but it just has no stats. The stats are so bad. It's no bulk, no offensive output whatsoever, and these stats are just way too much of a detriment, and there's no real reason to use this. Even down in ZU, it's getting outclassed by every other water type in there. It's an extraordinarily unfortunate Pokemon. For the electric type, the best in OU is Raging Bolt, the all-new past paradox form of Raikou with a very long neck. Raging Bolt is an electric dragon type Pokemon, very nice defensive type combo. Its stats are fantastic, especially its HP and special attack. This is an incredible bulky attacker, able to shrug off hits and dish out significant damage, especially because of its signature move Thunderclap, which is kind of like a special version of Sucker Punch. This has priority on it if the enemy uses an attacking move on the same turn. It will fail though if they don't attack. Same effect as Sucker Punch. And the fact that you have such a hard-hitting priority option on Raging Bolt is amazing. It makes up for its below average speed and makes it incredibly scary at all points of the game. Calm Mind is a great option to boost this up. You've got options like Draco Meteor and Volt Switch and Dragon Pulse. And of course Booster Energy to just give you that temporary boost that all Paradox Pokemon can get. Which are probably going to be to your special attack to just increase your damage output in the short term. An outstanding Pokemon and a central Pokemon in Gen 9 OU. And the worst electric type in the game, I think it would have to be Pachirisu. And I know that Pachirisu has one of the most historic wins in Pokemon history under its belt, but that was in doubles, and that was a long time ago. I don't know if people are even using this in VGC anymore as a utility follow me Pokemon with Super Fang and whatnot, and Nuzzle. That's what it was used for in that tournament. But in singles, this is an absolutely atrocious Pokemon, and even compared to its other Pikachu clones, which are all supposed to be pretty bad, they're not supposed to be outstanding Pokemon or anything, but even compared to some of them in the ZU tier, Pachirisu isn't offering much. It has very low offensive stats, and even Plusle and Minun are outdoing you on the offensive side. Deden has a superior Fairy dual typing and a better ability, perhaps. I will say that Pachirisu is probably outdoing all of the OU Pokemon in merchandise sales, and many would consider that to be the real competitive field. Pachirisu is bringing in much more revenue than Raging Bolt, I can tell you that much. I don't know any children buying Raging Bolt plush toys, but Pachirisu is a very marketable character with mass appeal. So I'd give it credit there, but in a competitive context, it simply doesn't have good enough stats to achieve value in games. Up next is the grass type, and technically the best grass type in OU is Ogerpon Wellspring, but I'm not going to do duplicates here. I will give these Pokemon one slot each to represent their types. The next best grass type in the game would be Rillaboom. Grass-type starter from Generation 8. A fantastic competitive Pokemon. With the incredible ability Grassy Surge to set grassy terrain on the field upon switching in. This is a great way to enable allies by granting them chip healing from the grassy terrain, also nerfing the damage of Earthquake, which helps ground-weak Pokemon, and you can allow your allies to consume the Grassy Seed, which can activate Unburden on offensive threats like Hawlucha. Beyond just the great utility offered by grassy terrain, you are a formidable physical attacker on your own merits. You've got Grassy Glide, which is a priority move that only works in grassy terrain and has above average power for a priority move of 55. Very good attack that can be a fantastic cleanup option in the late game, especially with a Choice Band boost and the grassy terrain damage boost. Wood Hammer is just a massive physical grass type move. U-turn is great to pivot, and knockoff is great coverage and item removal. Your stats are solid beyond that. Rillaboom offers a lot to teams. Easy fit and a fantastic choice. The worst grass type in the game is Sunflora. And I like Sunflora, I do. It's a happy Pokemon. It's happy to be there, and it has a good 3D animation. But this is a Chlorophyll Pokemon, and Chlorophyll is an ability that grants double speed in the sun. The problem is that your speed is only base 30, so you're achieving a maximum of like 300 something speed is not exactly an inspiring amount of speed for a Chlorophyll Pokemon. The rest of your stats are average, and there's not much else going for you. Even in the world of Chlorophyll Sweepers, there are better choices. You also have Solar Power, which I suppose would be a superior option for more damage output, but even in the lowest tier of ZU for competitive singles, I don't believe anybody's using Sunflora. I'm sorry to say it. Up next is the Ice type, and the best is Kyurem. Kyurem is the only OU ranked Ice type at the moment, and it is a fantastic Pokemon. They tried to ban this Pokemon, but it survived. The vote was rigged against it in an interesting drama situation. If you're curious about that, I covered that in a video. The ban votes for Kyurem were rigged by fake accounts, and it was a whole ordeal, and they had to delete the votes and then unban the guy who was wrongfully accused. But in current OU, it is legal, and it is one of the strongest offensive Pokemon in the format, with its fantastic 130 attack and special attack, great bulk to make up for its poor defensive typing of Dragon Ice. And it has wide offensive options, with Freeze Dry being a chief one that is able to deal super effective damage to water types despite being an Ice type attack, one of the best Ice type moves in the game. Earth Power is incredible coverage and complements Ice fantastically by threatening the Fire and Steel types that would otherwise resist you. Stab Draco Meteor goes crazy, and you can go special attack on this or physical, as you also have Dragon Dance, Scale Shot plus loaded dice. For the multi-hit moves, loaded dice causes multi-hit moves to hit at least 4 times. And then alongside Scale Shot and Icicle Spear, you have an incredible damage output with these multi-hit moves. Kyurem is very unpredictable. It can be either special or physical, and it's hard to tell which it is, and if you respond to it incorrectly, you can get really blown up. And the worst Ice type in the game, I'm sure you're not surprised to hear it, but it is Delibird. Delibird is a joke Pokemon, and it has been among the worst Pokemon in the whole series ever since its introduction. It's an Ice Flying type, which is atrocious, weak to everything humanity has to offer. The stats don't exist. Your highest stat is 75 speed, which is unexciting. Your offensive stats are absolutely terrible, 55 attack and 65 special attack, and you have no bulk to speak of either. Your typing is working against you, stats are working against you. The move pool is kind of interesting. You have Rapid Spin and Spikes, which is a little bit unique. And your abilities are Vital Spirit. You cannot sleep with Delibird. He cannot be put to sleep because sleep is the cousin of death, of course. And you have Hustle for an attack bonus with the drawback of reducing your accuracy. You're probably forced into running Hustle to do anything with Delibird just because it has to, deal some damage. It probably needs that, but the damage you will deal is rather pathetic. I would not hold this against Delibird. It is a joke Pokemon that is admittedly quite a funny joke. It's a funny Pokemon. I think we can agree. And Delibird got the last laugh with its Future Form Iron Bundle, which is an elite level threat, that the strongest thing we've ever seen. The ground type is up next, and the best in the game would be Great Tusk. Great Tusk is the new superstar of Gen 9 competitive singles. It is the #1 Pokemon by usage in the format, and it's easy to see why. Ground fighting is a great typing, offensively and defensively. You have Headlong Rush and Close Combat for some of the hardest hitting stab in the game. This Pokemon's stats are fantastic, with high HP attack and defense and respectable speed too. Rapid Spin is the real crux of what makes this such a great Pokemon with hazard removal and the speed boost effect, turning it into a monstrous offensive cleanup Pokemon as well as a utility Pokemon that can get rid of hazards. Knockoff is also crucial here for item removal, dark coverage, and progress making. Great Tusk can be a fully defensive Pokemon or an all-out aggressive Pokemon with bulk up sets using booster energy. This is the easiest Pokemon in the game to throw onto a team and succeed with. It is like the new Landorus Therian, but it's even better. The worst ground type in the game, I think it would have to be Camerupt. Another regrettable one. I'm a fan of this Pokemon. I think it's got a great visual design, but Camerupt is not holding up to modern scrutiny. Fire Ground was a decent typing when it debuted with useful immunities and defensive qualities, but these days Fire Ground has a real uphill battle with its times for water weakness especially, and a ground weakness not being fantastic either. Camerupt's stats are simply not good enough to compete, especially that horrendous base 40 speed, and not much to show for it in terms of bulk or anything. Your move pool is unexciting, with Stealth Rock being the best thing you can really hope to achieve, and maybe spreading some burn with Lava Plume, but that's about it. For Camerupt, then it's just unfortunately a pretty underpowered Pokemon ranked ZU and not even used in the tier at all. The ability Solid Rock, reducing super effective attacks, is barely a help for a Pokemon that time has left behind. Perhaps Camerupt deserves a new evolution in the next game, we can only hope. For the fighting type, the best Pokemon in OU with this typing would have to be Zamazenta, who is a box legendary, but in Gen 9 this Pokemon was unbanned and allowed to roam free in the OU format, where unsurprisingly it's seeing some success. Despite being one of the worst legendaries up in Ubers historically, with nobody wanting to use this in Gen 8, in Gen 9 OU it finally has a tier where it can function very well. Zamazenta's incredible stat distribution, especially its high speed stat of base 138, and its amazing ability Dauntless Shield, which grants a defense boost upon switching, gives Zamazenta a good mix of offense and defense. Zamazenta is a weird Pokemon because it's very fast, very offensively threatening, but its attacking options are limited. Body Press is by far its best option, a fighting type move that uses defense in the damage calculation instead of attack, and of course your defense is very high, especially from the Dauntless Shield boost. Iron Defense allows you to boost up your defense even further and get more out of Body Press, but this is your main way of dishing out damage, and it's obviously limited because the fighting type move and many things resist or are immune to fighting type moves. Zamazenta is both a win condition with this set and a blanket check to various physical threats with the Dauntless Shield boost and the high speed and the ability to roar them out, body press them, etc. Roar is nice to have on this to outrun something like a Tinglu Whirlwind who's trying to get rid of all your boosts, or to beat an enemy Zamazenta in the mirror match who's also trying to boost up its defense and sweep. I think having Zamazenta in OU has been a novel experience for Gen 9, helps the gen stand out a bit with a new option available, and it feels like a healthy presence overall with its clear limitations but also great strengths. It helps to curb certain popular threats like Ogerpon Wellspring, King Gambit, etc. For the worst fighting type in the game, it's a little bit of a difficult question because the only ZU ranked fighting types that aren't considered viable, meaning they aren't on the viability rankings, are Tauros, Paldea, Combat Form, and Phalanx. Every other one is ranked somewhere and is seen fairly commonly in the ZU format, which makes sense. I mean, looking at these Pokemon, they're all decent. They all have pretty good moveset options or abilities or ways that they can be used competitively. The only reason Tauros, Paldea, Combat is not ranked is because of the species clause, which means that you can't use two Pokemon of the same species on a team. And Tauros in its Cantonian form is a little bit better than Tauros in its fighting type Paldea form, because Cantonian Tauros has Sheer Force, which is a great ability offensively. So I wouldn't necessarily hold that against Tauros Combat. I think Tauros Combat is a pretty decent Pokemon in terms of stats and everything. I wouldn't call this the worst fighting type. So I think that the title has got to go to Phalanx. Phalanx is also, it doesn't seem that bad. It has the signature No Retreat, which is a very cool and unique boosting move that raises all of your stats by 1 and then traps you on the field. You can't switch out after using No Retreat. It's a very all-in option, and you also can't use this multiple times. You can't spam it. Phalanx also has the very good stab close combat option and knock off for some good coverage, and some other decent options too, like first impression, etc. But it does seem that of all the fighting types on the lower end of viability, Phalanx feels the most limited. I mean, many other fighting types in this format can function better with a choice set like Passimian. Primeape holding an EVR light probably has you beat as a bulk up boost sweeper, even though no retreat is a better boost. On the first turn, it has its limitations, trapping you in, and also it can't be used to ramp up boosts multiple times. It's only a single boost. So you'd rather a bulk up fighting type, and there are better options like Primeape or Hitmonchan. Other fighting types here have superior abilities like Intimidate on Hitmontop, and Hitmontop also has Rapid Spin. So Phalanx is feeling outclassed by all of its competition, even down in the depths of ZU, I would say. I like the Pokemon though, I like the design of it, with its unique signature move and the novel concept of the fellas marching in unison, the spheres coming together to form a conglomerate. But I think it's probably the worst fighting type in the game. Up next is the Poison type. And the best poison type in Gen 9 OU would have to be Galarian Slowking. Galarian Slowking is a regenerator Pokemon. This is one of the best abilities in the entire series. Restoring 1/3 of your HP every single time you switch out, it is the safest way to heal in the entire game. And considering that it has this outstanding ability, its defensive stats are pretty excellent. With high HP, high special defense, and even a high special attack, which allows this to output a bit of offense as well as being a defensive pivot. Galarian Slowking also gets the move Chilly Reception, which is a pivoting move, allowing you to switch out of the field, that also sets snow on the field. This is an incredible move, especially on a regenerator Pokemon that wants to take hits for its allies, pivot out, heal that health back up, and create a completely safe entry point. Chilly Reception is amazing on this, and you also have a fantastic special move pool. Future Sight is a good stab option that can output some serious damage with its 120 power. Sludge Bomb is always nice to hit fairy type super effectively and spread poison. You've got Flamethrower to hit such targets as Gholdengo and King Gambit trying to come in and threaten you. And then Thunder Wave is also amazing. One of the most reliable defensive Pokemon in Gen 9 OU that gets value in every single game it's in. It is so easy to throw onto teams. And for the worst poison type in the game, I've actually gone with Seviper. Seviper is just completely unexciting. It's a mono poison type, has the ability Shed Skin, which has a chance to cure status every turn, and an alternative ability of Infiltrator, which bypasses substitutes. This Pokemon's stats are very bad, with the underwhelming 100 in each attack. It's okay, but nothing particularly special in Gen 9, and everything else is just atrocious. Honestly, even other low-ranked poison types here, like Ariados, at least have Sticky Web to get some sort of value, or Arbok has very similar options to Seviper, but at least has Intimidate to do something on the way in and get some reliable progress going. Seviper just has abilities that don't serve it very much. Horrible defensive qualities. It has a wide attacking move pool, but its attacks aren't going to do much to anything. It's just a Pokemon that doesn't do anything, unfortunately. Even Ariados is doing more than this, and I'm being sincere when I say that. Seviper is not holding up to modern standards at all. This needs something Game Freak. It needs an evolution or a Mega Seviper or something good. Seviper has been left behind in a major way. For the flying type, I think it would have to be Dragonite. Dragonite is a classic Pokemon, of course, existing since back in Gen 1, and in Gen 9 it might just be at the peak of its power. Dragonite has been a top Pokemon in OU ever since the beginning of the generation in every single DLC. No matter what, this Pokemon has been succeeding and thriving in this generation. This Pokemon was made for the terrestrialization mechanic, as not only are you defensively giving yourself more turns to set up with Dragon Dance, and that synergizes very well with Multiscale too to minimize the incoming damage even further, but Terra Normal is such a great option alongside Extreme Speed to boost up that stab damage and give you a very hard-hitting priority option. Dragonite also just has an amazing offensive move pool, and Multiscale is this just beautiful safety net against any incoming hit at all. Normal isn't the only Terra type this can use, with Steel and Fire being good options too to gain important resistances and also boost offensive options for those types with the increased stab damage. Dragonite is one of the best boost sweepers in the game. It's incredibly consistent on what it does, and it's just a perfect storm for Dragonite in this generation. Everything is working for it, and it is having the time of its life. For the worst flying type, it's actually kind of a tough one, because there are a lot of really bad flying types ranked all the way down to ZU, many that are just never seen in competitive play at all. But out of all of them, I think that the most unexciting and the worst would have to be Noctowl. This Pokemon really doesn't offer anything. It has the ability Insomnia, which is useless now because sleep isn't even in the game anymore. Even if it was, this is pretty unexciting stuff that is not that useful. Tinted Lens doesn't really make much sense on this Pokemon with no offensive stats to speak of. This is a great ability that doubles damage against not very effective targets, but is Noctowl really using this for much? It has 86 special attack, folks. The stats are just atrocious by modern standards. It has Defog, which is okay. It can heal with Roost. Is it okay, U-turn? No U-turn. I honestly think Squawkabilly is better than this because it has Intimidate. I think that Dodrio has this beat. Similar typing, but better offensive tools. Even among the absolute worst birds in existence, Noctowl is failing to stand out very much from the crowd. I think it's the worst flying type in the game. For the Psychic type, we have Iron Crown, the future Paradox form for Cobalion, Robotic Cobalion, and the most competitively successful of the future Swords of Justice trio, those being Iron Boulder and Iron Leaves as the counterparts. Iron Crown is the only one ranked in OU, and it's a rare defensive Psychic type that actually works in the modern climate. Psychic is not having a fun time being weak to Knock Off and Shadow Ball, and with so many strong Ghost and Dark types in the format too, like King Gambit, Gholdengo, Dragapult, all threatening you super effectively, but Iron Crown manages to actually exist as a Steel Psychic type with its great offensive and defensive traits that keep up with the pace quite well. Iron Crown has the great signature attack Tachyon Cutter, which is a 50 power special attacking steel type move that hits twice. This is able to bypass Focus Sash and Sturdy and stuff when it attacks, as well as just having really solid damage output for a steel type move, hitting the various fairy types of the tier very hard. You also have Volt Switch, meaning you can act as a pivot, and you're very speedy for such a defensive Pokemon too, with very well-rounded stats, high speed and special attack. And this is a natural Assault Vest user because it can come in and take hits very well, outrun many things, output some great damage, and pivot with Volt Switch. It doesn't have the longevity of something like a Blissey, but it's way more proactive and aggressive than Blissey is. And that's what counts in Gen 9. Future Sight is great for stab, and Focus Blast for coverage. Iron Crown can also run choice spec sets to just maximize its damage output, which is also a fantastic way to go with it. You can also run Agility Stored Power and Weakness Policy if you are interested in a more boost sweeping win condition version of Iron Crown. That's another way to go. And for the worst Psychic type in the game, it's gotta be Chimecho. This Pokemon is feeling really outdated in Gen 9. Chimecho really doesn't do much. It's a mono Psychic typing, which is poor defensively these days, as we've established. The stats are dreadful. Let's not mince words. They're dreadful. You at least have healing, and I believe you get Heal Bell and Healing Wish. These are things that provide some value, but it's honestly tough for this to even take a hit and survive or do much of anything. I don't think that this is even in the conversation to appear on ZU teams. It's competing with like Grumpig, who is better offensively. What other Psychic types exist in ZU? There is a Farigiraffe is a really good one with pretty nice stats and the agility stored power stuff. In DD, set Psychic Terrain, you got Meowstic who has Prankster. I mean, look at all these Psychic types you're competing with down in the worst tier of competitive Pokemon. I mean, Chimecho is paling in comparison to Oricorio Pau, and that's how you know that you're absolutely cooked, folks. When Oricorio Pau is even giving you a run for your money, I think it's time to retire. The Bug type is up next, and this is kind of crazy because the only OU ranked Bug type in the game at the moment is Araquanid. What an insane turn of events. Araquanid is the only Bug type in the whole format, and I think it's the highest by usage too. The only other contender, I guess, for the title of best bug type might be Low Kicks, but I don't think Low Kicks is as commonly used right now as Araquanid. Araquanid has risen up to fill the role of a sticky web setter in Gen 9 OU with some pretty fitting qualities for the role. Water Bubble is a really amazing ability that grants ×2 power to your water moves, as well as an immunity to burn and a bonus resistance to fire damage. That's a lot in a single ability, pretty incredible stuff. And because of this power boost from Water Bubble, your base stats don't matter that much because water type attacks will hit really hard. So even though you have very low special attack, the Water Bubble increases the damage of Surf so significantly that it's worth running. And Surf is a great option to hit common lead matchups very well, like Great Tusk, Gliscor, Landorus Therian. You can hit all of them for significant damage. You can set Sticky Web, which is a great hazard that lowers speed on switch-in, and Araquanid happens to have the requisite bulk to live a lot of hits against lead matchups, especially because of its high special defense. Even like an incoming Hurricane from Zapdos or an Electric move from Raging Bolt won't one-hit you. You will make your Sticky Web and then you'll be in the range of this Kustap Berry, which is when you're at a quarter health or less, you get to move first in your prior bracket. And then you get to Endeavor them and bring them all the way down to very low HP for a follow-up. If you don't get hit into the Kustap, you have Endure to guarantee that you can get this Kustap Berry value. Endure is a move that allows you to survive on 1 HP when used. Another option you have at your disposal is Mirror Coat, reflecting back damage from a special hit. Because your special bulk is so great naturally, you can take hits and then mirror the damage back and get a KO, activate the Kustap Berry, make webs. It's a really, really nice early game lead on offensive webs teams, and it's outclassed other options like Rabombi that were formerly the kings of this role. Araquanid is really consistent at getting the hazard up that you need to get up, and going down swinging with Endeavor and Surf, which hits unexpectedly hard, and Mirror Coat to sometimes earn a surprise KO. So Araquanid is, I guess, the best bug type competitively in Gen 9 OU right now. What an unexpected turn of events. And for the worst bug type in the game, I have gone with Vespiquen. And this might look really weird. I'm sure you're imagining way more worse bug types. Like what about Spidops or Leavanny or something? I think Vespiquen is actually worse than all of them because it doesn't provide any meaningful value to teams at all. This doesn't have Sticky Web like many bug types do, and honestly, because of that, I would rather run Spidops as bad as it is, just because it can make Sticky Web, which has an impact on the game. What is Vespiquen doing really? It's not bulky enough to exist as a defensive Pokemon, its stats are not anything special, pressure is not really coming into play to stall PP. Does it have knockoff? No. Does it have defog even? No. It doesn't even do much of anything. The best it could do is pivot with U-turn if it manages to survive a hit miraculously with the terrible bug flying typing. It could set toxic spikes, and that is the best it can hope for. A fairly weak hazard compared to Sticky Web especially, that is easy to stop. Maybe you can also Destiny Bond and trade with something at best. I don't think Vespiquen does much. Even Leavanny was used on an OU team recently to surprising success. Like I said, I would rather run Ariados because it has Sticky Web. I would rather run Spidops because it has Sticky Web. I think it's Vespiquen. I think this Pokemon has no reason to exist, and it doesn't provide anything in competitive. As strange as that sounds, you'd think it would be a little insect instead of the mother bee, but I don't know what this Pokemon does. Rock type is up next, and the best rock type in Gen 9 OU is definitely Gholdengo, one of the icons of Gen 9, one of the best competitive singles Pokemon in terms of new additions, ever since the beginning. Gholdengo is a rock type that beat the curse of rock types not being able to function defensively, because it actually has a really good special defense stat of base 90, well-balanced defenses, and it has recovery. It has the move Recover to heal up, so Gholdengo can actually be a really good defensive wall. It also has the ability Purifying Salt, which is one of the best abilities we have ever seen. This grants a complete immunity to being statused. Not only if it's directly applied by moves like Toxic and Thunder Wave, but also from secondary effects like Scald and Sludge Bomb, which have secondary effects that apply status. You can't be statused at all. That's amazing. On top of that, you also have a random resistance to Ghost thrown in, which is really good because Ghost type attacks are very common, like Dragapult Shadow Ball and stuff like that. Gholdengo also has Salt Cure as its signature move, which is a really, really good attack. It's a 40 power rock type physical attack that has a damage over time effect, dealing 1/8 of a Pokemon's max HP per turn. This is a really high amount of damage over time, outdoing Poison and also hitting every type. You know, Poison and Burn and a Leech Seed and effects like that have immunities they have to worry about, certain types that can come in and shrug them off. But Salt Cure hits everything. And it's a pretty good attack, and it can't be taunted or beat by other effects like that. Also, against specifically Steel and Water types, which are two of the most common types in the game, the damage over time effect deals 1/4 of their HP per turn, and that is absolutely enormous. That is a death sentence for any Steel or Water type coming into Salt Cure. 1/4 of a Pokemon's HP per turn is incredibly high. That's the amount Stealth Rock deals to a super effective target. So Gholdengo with all these great defensive traits and even Stealth Rock for some utility. On top of that, Salt Cure to get some guaranteed little chip damage and value. Curse sets are also good for a win con. Easy to see why this is such a good Pokemon. It's also a fantastic Pokemon to terrestrialize with, as Mono Rock can have its shortcomings, but if you become a Fairy type on this or a Water type, you are loving life all of a sudden and really walling a lot more Pokemon with this. For the worst Rock type Pokemon in Gen 9 OU, I think it would have to be Stonjourner, a Pokemon inspired by Stonehenge, but not as culturally significant, I would say. It does have nice stats. Those are HP, attack, and defense, but absolutely horrible special defense. Any special hit at all will devastate this. Very low speed at base 70, and the useless ability Power Spot. This is a doubles ability granting 1.3 times damage to your ally in doubles. I think even in doubles you never see this. It's just so bad in every other way. But I mean, even comparing this to some of the worst rock types in the game, like Sudowoodo. Sudowoodo at least has Sturdy and Stealth Rock and Spikes. I don't think you have Spikes. No, you don't. So I'm not sure what Stunjourner ever accomplishes. It has no safety net of Sturdy, which many similar rock types do. It's too slow to really output much aggression. It can make Stealth Rock, but, you know, my grandmother can create Stealth Rock. Anybody can create Stealth Rock. It's not that special. Stunjourner, just an overall incredibly unexciting Pokemon, outclassed by even the worst rock types on the market. Up next is the Ghost type, and there is only one answer. It is Gholdengo. Gholdengo is the best Ghost type in the game easily. This Pokemon is probably the greatest icon of Gen 9. For better or for worse, people hate this guy. They hate his guts. They think that it should never have been made. They think it looks stupid. It looks like a cheese stringer man. He's also made of solid gold, people have said. I, for one, like Gholdengo. I like him. I think he's cool. I think he's funny. And I think he's as good as gold. The ability Good as Gold grants a complete immunity to status moves. That doesn't just include Thunder Wave, Toxic, etc. That includes pretty much every non-attacking move that is applied to the enemy. That includes Defog. You can't Defog against this, and it will block Defog from even happening. You can't trick it. You can't Whirlwind it out or Roar it out. You can't lower its stats with a stat debuff. You can't really do anything to Gold. It feels like it's immune to everything that's ever existed. It's an insane ability. It's maybe the best ability ever. That's a solid contender at least. It's an unreal ability. And Gholdengo's stats are nothing to sneeze at either, with very high special attack, decently well-rounded stats considering the sheer, you know, S tier status of the ability. These stats are serviceable, of course, especially special attack. And your move pool is also great, and your typing's also great. Steel Ghost, elite level typing. So many resistances. Ghost blocks rapid spin. It's immune to a million things. It's great offensively. Steel is one of the other best types in the game. Put them together and you have a recipe for success. Gholdengo has Make It Rain, an outstanding signature move that deals 120 damage with 100 accuracy. It's a special attack with the small drawback of -1 special attack upon being used. I mean, this is outdoing Draco Meteor, which is a very similar move, but it's less accurate and you lose 2 stages of special attack. Considering the power and the accuracy of this move, -1 special attack is nothing. And Steel is a pretty good offensive type too, with Stab Boost and this special attack. And you have Recovery, you have Thunder Wave, you got set variety on this. Trick Choice Scarf is really good. You've got bulky sets, Nasty Plot to boost up your special attack. This Pokemon defines Gen 9 OU. It is maybe the most metagame impactful Pokemon in all of Gen 9 OU. The universe revolves around Gholdengo, whether we like it or not. And on the opposite end, the worst Ghost type in the game is unfortunately Banette, another Pokemon that I love. A Pokemon that was OU viable back in Gen 3, believe it or not. In modern times, though, Banette is atrocious. This is a mono Ghost type Pokemon with some of the worst stats ever, an unbelievable 65 defense. It has a high attack, and that was always its best trait, but it's way too slow to take much advantage of that, and its attacking options are severely limited. It struggles to get on the field with its frailty, and even once it's there, what is it really doing? It might knock off an item, it might hit you with Poltergeist, which is a high power Ghost type attack at least, that hits pretty hard off this 115 attack, but other than that, you've got nothing on this. You got very, very limited attacking options. You just got Will-O-Wisp as one of its better tools, but it's not a very well-suited Will-O-Wisp spreading Pokemon. Even in the ZU tier, you are seriously suffering against other Ghost types like Drifblim, who is faster and has Defog and is more useful. Sableye is a much better Pokemon. Even Spiritomb is outdoing Banette. Banette doesn't even have a place for itself. In the lowest power level format of Gen 9, there's nowhere for Banette to exist or achieve anything. This is a Pokemon that has been left behind. It already had one of the worst Mega Forms, but now its base form is truly achieving very little. Will we get a Banette evolution in the next game? I certainly hope that they give Banette something. I've always liked this Pokemon, and I think it feels very outdated and it needs some sort of a boost. For sure. It needs something. I would love to see it. The best Dragon type in OU? Dragapult. The pseudo-legendary of Gen 8, still excellent in Gen 9. Dragon Ghost is a fantastic dual type combo. This Pokemon's stats are very good, especially its massive base 142 speed stat and solid offensive stats. Dragapult has a vast move pool, especially on the special attacking side, with Shadow Ball and Draco Meteor for great stab, U-turn for pivoting, and even some great coverage like Fire Blast and Hydro Pump and electric moves and other such options. Dragapult's most popular set at the moment is probably this one with heavy duty boots to ignore hazards on the way in, allowing you more entry points and less punishment for hitting the field. And this one with the Will-O-Wisp Hex combo, which is a classic combo. Burn the enemy, deal double damage with Hex on a statused target. Dragon Darts is also a really nice physical dragon move you've got access to. 50 power and hits twice. Just an unbelievably solid offensive Pokemon that's outrunning most of the world, often getting momentum and value with its status and U-turn and many different attacking options. It even has Infiltrator for further value, as it can bypass Substitute and attack through enemy substitutes, so even the plush merchandise in front of you will not save you from Dragapult's onslaught. And the worst dragon type in the game has got to be Flapple. Flapple is technically a fully evolved dragon type, even though Hydrapple does exist. Hydrapple evolves from Diplin. Flapple evolves from Applin. It's a confusing evolutionary line, but Flapple is one of the fully evolved branching evolutions in that line. And Flapple, for a fully evolved Pokemon, is pretty underpowered. Love the visual design of it, and it's an apple dragon that's flying. It's very creative stuff, but the abilities are very unexciting on this. Ripen grants double effects of berries. It's not particularly great. It's okay, I guess. Gluttony means that you eat berries sooner at half max HP. All right. And then Hustle, we've talked about this already, but the accuracy debuff is not really a reliable way to go in competitive. You don't want to introduce mischances into things. Flapple is a grass dragon type, and it may have Dragon Dance to boost itself up, but its attacking options are pretty limited. Gravapple is an interesting grass physical move, probably its best move, but this isn't enough to really justify its existence. The effect of lowering defense 100% of the time is quite good, but you lack good ground or fighting coverage to threaten the steel types that can easily just come in and stop you in your tracks. On top of that, I mean, your stats are just average, and this Pokemon isn't even worth using compared to other dragon types in ZU. Funnily enough, every single ZU dragon type has the grass dragon typing. That's quite funny. But even Diplin with an Eviolite is better. Even Exeggutor Alola has more going on. And Appleton has some defensive value with Thick Fat, which is actually a good ability. Flapple has poor abilities, poor damage output. It's outdone by other physical threats in ZU, and there isn't much reason to use it. Up next is the Dark type, and the best in the game in Gen 9 OU is Kingambit. One of Gen 9's most definitive Pokemon, the best Pokemon in the format in many people's eyes. Kingambit has the ability Supreme Overlord, which grants 10% power to all of your moves for each fainted ally. So if this is the last Pokemon standing, you get an incredible 50% power boost, which is absolutely enormous, and that bypasses effects like Unaware. Unaware will not ignore this source of damage. Kingambit has fantastic stats, especially its massive attack, but it also has great HP and defense. And Kingambit is a perfect abuser of the move Sucker Punch. Sucker Punch being a priority move that only works if the enemy attacks. But the fact that this fairly slow and bulky Pokemon has the ability to hit like a truck with Sucker Punch, yes, like a truck. Yes, it hits like a truck, is so frightening, especially when it's Swords Danced up and it's got, 5 Supreme Overlord boosts. If Kingambit's in the game is never over. Even if it's the last Pokemon standing, it can Sucker Punch everything and one-hit them all, and just absolutely rob games it has no business winning. Kingambit is perhaps the most powerful offensive force in Gen 9 that every team needs a response to. And even if you have a response to it, it might just overwhelm you anyway, with its sheer power. And the worst Dark type in the game, it's got to be the Mightyena, the Pooch Dog, who is unfortunately... this Pokemon was never good, we can be honest. Mightyena never really did anything, even in Gen 3, when it debuted. Even back then, it was kind of useless, with very unimpressive stats and a limited move pool. Mightyena does have Intimidate, which is a very good ability, and Moxie, for a more aggressive approach. You don't even get knockoff on this. Do you get U-turn? No. Your offensive options are incredibly limited, your stats are incredibly limited, and there's not much more to say about that, is there? Mightyena is a bad Pokemon. They do say that every dog has its day, though. That's been said. So maybe one day Mightyena will receive a new evolution that makes us all regret what we said about it and take it all back and apologize. I hope so. I hope that he has his day. He's patiently waiting. He's been patiently waiting for years. One of the rare dogs that has never had its day, but it will come, okay? It will come for him. For the steel type up next, it would have to be Iron Treads, the future paradox form of Don Fan, and a counterpart to Great Tusk. Unlike Great Tusk, Iron Treads is a ground steel type Pokemon, defined by its much higher speed stat of base 106. Iron Treads is a bit more effective against the all-new Raging Bolt. Iron Treads is one of the best switch-ins to Raging Bolt, as it is immune to electric and resists Dragon. Great Tusk, on the other hand, is more threatened by those Dragon hits. Iron Treads is also nice because it has access to Volt Switch, which is pretty nice to pivot out, and it's effective with a booster energy because it can get a significant speed boost, allowing its rapid spins to be more reliable. This is a fantastic Swiss Army knife of utility and bulk. It can check various things. It's got similar defensive stats to Great Tusk, a little bit worse on the attack side, but higher speed and the different typing with its own pros and cons. Iron Treads is quite easy to fit on teams and succeed with. Sometimes it's even better than Great Tusk, depending on the team, and certainly one of the most consistent and highly sought after steel types of the new generation. There are, of course, already some very powerful steel types on this list, such as Gholdengo and King Gambit, but the next best one behind them would be Iron Treads. And the worst steel type in the game would be Bastiodon. And to be honest, as far as bad Pokemon go, this one isn't completely terrible. It has Sturdy for a safety net against an incoming hit, allowing it to live on 1 HP. It has Stealth Rock, that's something. Metal Burst is pretty nice on this Pokemon, returning damage back to an enemy no matter whether it's physical or special, kind of like Counter and Mirror Coat combined. It reflects back less damage, but actually a fairly good option. And Body Press as well, scaling based on defense, is a good fit on a Pokemon with such high defense. The thing about Bastiodon though is that there are just so many other Pokemon that do what it does better. Even in Gen 9 ZU, where the worst of the worst call home, there's Probopass, who is a Pokemon with the same exact typing and very similar qualities, high defense and special defense. It also has Sturdy if it wants, but it has Magnet Pull, which is a more useful ability, allowing it to trap steel types, and in fact Probopass even saw some niche usage in OU a little bit. Other low tier steel types like Orthworm also have similar traits, but Orthworm has Earth Eater as well as a Mono Steel typing, which is much better. Bastiodon's Rock Steel typing is a little bit rough. It's ×4 weak to ground and fighting, which is not very good. And this is a Pokemon with very little in the way of unique advantages to speak of. And finally, we have the Fairy type, the best type in the game in the eyes of many. The best neutral defensive type you can have, a common choice for terrestrialization to gain nice neutrality against everything, and, even an immunity to Dragon, which comes in handy all the time. Of all the Fairy types in Gen 9 OU, the best would have to be Iron Valiant, an offensively leaning Fairy type. It's a very fighting dual type Pokemon, a future fusion of Gardevoir and Gallade, and one of my favorite new Pokemon because it's a mixed attacker and I love mixed attackers. This has 130 attack and 120 special attack and plenty of attacking options that are both physical and special. It's also incredibly fast. You have stab options that are both physical and special. Coverage like Thunderbolt and Shadow Ball and Knockoff, even good utility like Encore and Destiny Bond. You can run Calm Mind to boost up on the special side. You can run Shadow Snake for some priority. The move pool on Iron Valiant is vast. It can take advantage of the booster energy better than anything else, achieving very high speed from booster energy and operating as the best late game cleaner in the whole game because unlike other fast Pokemon, it has a ×4 resistance to Sucker Punch, so it's not worried about King Gambit at all. And in fact, it even threatens King Gambit with lethal force thanks to close combat and ruins its life with Encore. Iron Valiant was made for this role. It is the most effective in it and one of the best and most consistent offensive Pokemon maybe that we've ever seen. Certainly in Gen 9 OU. The worst Fairy type in the game, I would have to say that it is Dead End. Unfortunately, this Pokemon has reached its dead end. Allow me to say though, perhaps my favorite of the Pikachu clones, love the visual of this. A beautiful creature design. And Electric Fairy is an okay typing. It's got Cheek Pouch to heal when it eats a berry, but the stats aren't good. It's got little in the way of utility and it might nuzzle you to paralyze you, but that's all it can really do. There are some other bad Fairy types, to be honest, like Granbull is quite bad, but that can at least intimidate you and maybe bulk up and win or something. There's Wigglytuff is quite bad, but defensively it's okay. I don't know what Dead End does. I don't think it does anything. It's not supposed to do anything. It's a funny Pikachu clone that exists to be cute merchandise. It succeeds in that department. And much like the Pachirisu, this is destroying Iron Valiant in merch sales and revenue, for sure. Dead End has probably made $1 billion lifetime. Everybody's buying Dead End plush toys. Iron Valiant plush toys, I don't know if they've even sold 3 of them yet. I don't know if they even exist. But it still stands that I think Deaden, or Dedenne? I think that's how they said it in the TV show. I prefer to call him Deaden. I think that sounds funnier, so I'm going to call him that. This guy's the worst one. We don't hold that. Does anybody hold that against him? I don't. Nobody holds that against you, Deaden. You're okay in my book. But that does it, folks. The best and worst Pokemon of every type in a Gen 9 competitive singles context. Do you agree or disagree with any of my placements? Let me know down below in the comments, and thank you for watching.